I want to ask you this. You tweeted this out. It's about Warren said, as I said before, Warren Buffett vertically integrated investments in the production of high fructose corn syrup, a key ingredient in highly processed foods, and contributed to child obesity, and generates massive profits for himself and Bill Gates. And you tweeted out this article from the Children's Health Defense Org, and it says how Warren Buffett and Bill Gates make a killing off of childhood obesity. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, chronic disease in children has increased since 1940. It was 6% of Americans had chronic disease. By 1986, it was 11.8%. By 2006, 64% of American children have chronic disease. These are neurological diseases, autoimmune diseases, and primarily and allergic diseases like peanut allergies, et cetera. Most of them appeared around 1989. Those diseases became pandemic or epidemic that year. One of the diseases that became epidemic is obesity. Obesity, the science there's intense science on obesity now. There's more and more science indicating that a lot of obesity has links to autoimmunity. But there are plenty of scientific studies that show that probably our children are swimming around in a toxic soup right now. So there's pesticides, there's glyphosate, there's cell phones that are, there's vaccines, all of this other stuff that is affecting their immune systems and that have the potential to increase or trigger autoimmunity. So you can't point to a specific, because Anthony Fauci has never done the studies, which are the biggest disease epidemic in our country, which is chronic disease and the most damaging, and he won't touch it because the people who are responsible for those things are big, important pharmaceutical companies, chemical companies, food processing companies, telephone companies, et cetera. They won't let anybody study that. You try to study that and your career is over. Your university will be defunded if you try to answer that question. Where is the chronic disease coming from? But there are studies out there that mostly point to the biggest culprit is high fructose corn syrup. And if you go to the parts of the country where, in the Corn Belt and just take a look at, what's happened to people, is frightening in terms of obesity. And so the guys who are responsible for that, are largely Gates and Buffett, because they vertically integrate. Not only do they own the farmland, Gates is the biggest farmland owner in America, but they own Monsanto. Gates, I think, was the biggest shareholder at one point, and Buffett, which makes the GMO corn, which is gets the subsidy, so everybody has to grow it, and then they got to do something with it. So they make corn syrup and they put it in all of our food, and it's in all processed food. They own the food processors, they own the silo systems, and they own the truck and rail systems that transport it, and then they own McDonald's and Kraft and all the big food processors that then put it in their food and sell it to us. So they vertically integrated corn syrup. And, they're destroying public health in our country. And if you look, our country, Jimmy, has the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world. We also had the highest death rate from COVID. So we had by far the highest body count. We have 4.2% of the world's population. We had 16% of the COVID deaths. Well, one of those reasons is we banned ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine in early treatment. The other reason is we got this disease burden of chronic disease and particularly obesity. And that's what was killing people with COVID.
But I just have to make sure.
Bill Gates saying he's a public health expert, but the stuff that he invests in is not healthy. He's invested in Monsanto at one end and in McDonald's at the other end. He's not he's not trying to get us healthier. So he's profiting on our diseases.
I have to quickly, before my next question, we're not saying ivermectin treats COVID-19 here at this show. Of course it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's why they.
I wouldn't say that on your show.
That's why of course it doesn't treat COVID-19. That's just crazy talk that you hear from scientists who invented the mRNA vaccine technology. It's just crazy talk. It's just crazy talk you hear from the top scientists. I'm not saying that. I'm not advocating that. Nobody is here. Please don't take down my channel. Why? So guys, people. I was in a conversation the other night, and I was trying to explain to people that Bill Gates, just because he wears a crew neck sweater, glasses, and he's a computer nerd, doesn't make him a good person. He's a monopolist and a megalomaniac, and he's just as big as evil as anybody can be. And they're like, Jimmy, he's giving all his money away. He's trying to cure malaria. This guy is he's just the greatest guy in the world. And I know that's because he bought media and journalism to plant those stories in the media, so people think that. So what do you say to people when they say they're going to Warren Buffett is going to give away all his money, Bill Gates, the giving pledge, they're going to give away all their money? What do you say to that?
I don't know. I really don't know anything about Warren Buffett enough to make any kind of speculation about. He did resign from Gates's foundation, but so I don't know whether he was seduced by Gates or what. I have no idea, or whether he's, I don't know. He seems like a very nice guy. Gates, I know a lot about. I don't try to look into his head in my book, that I wrote about him and Fauci. But, he himself calls what he does, what he says that what he does is not philanthropy, it's philanthrocapitalism. And that is his term that he coined. And he said it's a way of using philanthropy to make money, essentially. So what he does is he invests in, for example, all the vaccine companies, and then he uses philanthropy to get control of WHO and mandates vaccines for 161 million African kids. And it's his vaccines they're mandating. And, he does the same with food production. He did, he got the WHO to push the Green Revolution, which was to persuade Africans to abandon 20,000 generations of subsistence agriculture to get rid of their barley and their, sorghum and their, plantains and local foods, that legacy foods that they've been feeding their families generation, and switch to corn monocultures that are GMO corn. He built supply chains across Africa so that Cargill and Monsanto could deliver their chemicals and fertilizers. So he's switching all of them to chemical agriculture with all these expensive intakes. And the only way, and what he says is, and I will have my companies, McDonald's and Kraft, buy the food from you, buy the corn from you. And so 30 million additional Africans are now at the starvation level because of the Green Revolution. It didn't work. And it has been a catastrophe for Africa, but it's been very good for Gates because his companies have gotten very, very rich. He did the same thing with vaccines. He did the same thing with, the Common Core curriculum. It's Microsoft that, provides the computers, that gets the kids hooked on the computers. And then, there's an angle, And he admits it. He says it's philanthrocapitalism. Every time you give him money, you get a little back, and there's always an angle.
All that stuff that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was saying, we don't endorse any of it. And the vaccine, of course, is fantastic. The COVID-19 vaccine, it slows the spread and the contraction of the virus, and it keeps you out of getting seriously ill, sick, or in the hospital. It's fantastic. If you want to see my stand-up special, become a member at jimmydore.com. It's only $10, and come see our live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Honolulu, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, and more.